I'd like to start, when we get into the automatic doors, I'd like to talk about a little bit about what we're gonna cover today, and then for those of you that are here tomorrow and the next day. There are really two categories of automatic pedestrian doors in the industry today. Two categories. Over here on one side we have the full power automatic sliding doors. Yeah, I'm not going to go by the slides. Okay. Yeah, I do better just winging it on this stuff, I think. So we have two categories. We have the full power automatic slide, swing, and folding doors. And then we have the low energy category of doors. And the low energy category also includes slide, swing, and folding doors. They're two distinct and separate different types of doors for distinctively different applications. It's important to know when you go out to service one of these doors, or even if you're maybe selling or talking to customers about it, it's important to know the difference of the application, because one of the things that happens is a customer might think they want a low energy door, and the requirements for low energy doors are way different than the requirements for full power doors. So they think they want a low energy door, and as soon as you get it installed, then they say, oh, well, that door needs to work faster. It needs to open faster. It needs to close faster. So, well, if you do that, it may not be in compliance with the codes and regulations for low energy doors anymore. So you may have created a situation where the door is now unsafe because it's not being used as it was originally intended. And the other part of that makes it even more confusing is that most of the products on the market today, not only Horton but the other products, it's just really a matter of how it's set up and adjusted. So you can take a low energy swing operator, and by making the proper adjustments on the control, it can become a full power swing operator with enough power to, really knock somebody down. So it's important to understand two separate and distinct categories of doors. What's the application? Is it a full power application, supermarket swing doors? Not very common, kind of west of the Mississippi, but still very common in the Northeast. Power operated automatic swing doors are still very popular in the Northeast. What's the application? Full power, supermarket, or is it a bank of doors going into a mall maybe, and they want to automate one or two of the doors to provide accessibility for disabled people or for people who may need help getting to the door. That's a low energy application. And so we're going to talk a lot about the differences. With regard to that, most, if not all, of the products on the market today are electromechanical. In the early days, we had pneumatics. There's still probably some hydraulics in use around the country, but for the most part today they're electromechanical. So you've got a mechanical drive mechanism, whether it be a swing operator or a slide operator. You've got some type of a gear drive or some other form of a mechanical drive, which is typically referred to as the operator. And you have a control. And this control contains all the electronics, and as progression goes, they become more and more sophisticated, being microprocessor based and whatnot. So they consist of electrical aspect, which Jim is the kind of the master of, and that's going to be covering most of our most of our electronic troubleshooting and guidance on that. With regard to, once again, swing doors, most of the swing operators on the market today are power open, spring close. Swing operators, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, are power open, spring close. Whereas the slide doors, and that includes folding doors. So when I talk about swing doors in that regard, that includes folding doors as well. The power open, spring close. Sliding doors, on the other hand, power open, power close. Let's talk about the specific categories of full power doors. Swinging doors. Full power swinging doors, they are available in a number of configurations. Single doors, pairs of doors, double egress doors, right? Regardless of the type of configuration of a full power swing door, whether it's a single, pair, or dual or double egress, they all require activation sensors or activation mats. Mats are really kind of fading out, still some in the Northeast, but for the most part you don't see them around the rest of the country. They require activation, whether it be a sensor or a mat. They require safety sensors. They have to have safety sensors. And safety sensors for swing doors come in two basic varieties. We have door-mounted sensors, where the sensor is actually mounted to the moving door panel. It could be across the top, could be in the upper corner, it could be across the mid-rail, it could be on the two vertical rails. There are a lot of different varieties of sensors for swing doors. But they're required. You have to have safety sensors to prevent the door from opening on a person who is in the swing path of the door during the opening cycle. And they have to have sensors on them to prevent a door from closing on a person who might be in the swing path while the door is closing. Okay?
Door mounted?
There's door mounted
Yes,
sensors, and there are overhead mounted sensors. Either ones can be made, can be adjusted to accomplish the ultimate in safety. But the point is that there are two kinds available today in use.
Right.
Door mounted, and while we're starting to see a trend towards door mounted sensors being a little more common than overhead mounted, there's still a huge market for overhead mounted sensors for activation and for safety. Okay? The other thing that they have to have is they have to have guide rails. We'll talk a lot more about this in Adam, but full power operated swing doors have to have guide rails on each side of the door. If you have a pair of doors, there has to be one on each hinge side. Okay? If it's double egress, there has to be one on each hinge side for the side the door swings to. So let's not overlook that. Full power doors have to have sensors, activation and safety sensors. They have to have guide rails. And what else do they have to have? Signage. Let's not forget the signage. Signage is very important. Many times customers are going to say, I don't want that sign on my door. I don't want that sign on my door. That's ugly. We got our own signs we want to use. And they may have their own signs, but there are some codes and requirements. We'll talk about that a little bit too in a minute. The sign might comply with the local codes, but there has to be signage on the door. And you just have to explain to the customer that it's better to be safe, than pretty. Or use whatever technique you have to use. But they have to have signage. Questions on full power swing doors? Automatic sliding doors, full power automatic sliding doors. They're available, once again, in a variety of configurations. And we're going to get into the specifics on that later as well. But they're available as single slide doors where you have one moving leaf and one stationary leaf, or in what's termed as biparting, which is like you see here. You have two sliding panels that meet in the middle to close. They part in the middle to open, and you have side lights on the side. They have to have certain requirements too. They have to have sensors on them or mats for activation, and they have to have sensors to protect the threshold area when the door starts to close. And they are also available in a number of different styles and types today, but that you have to have them. They're required by the code, and there has to be adequate safety sensors, and they have to have signage. Once again, signage is required. Next category is folding doors. The thing to remember about folding doors is that a folding door opens like a swing door, closes like a sliding door. We'll get into the specifics when we have graphics on that. as we get deeper into this. This is more of kind of give an overview. But full power folding doors, once again, have to have safety sensors, activation sensors, guide rails, and signage. That defines full power doors. On the other side, we have these low energy doors. By design, low energy doors are safe without sensors. By design, because they're designed to be safe without sensors. It isn't to say you can't add safety sensors, because you can, but they're designed to be safe without sensors because they're designed to open slowly, close slowly, generate very little energy, both opening or closing, have a long hold open time delay, and have appropriate signage. So when you get into the low energy category, and the other thing about low energy doors, all low energy doors, swinging, sliding, and folding, is they have to absolutely, no exceptions, be knowing act activation. That means there has to be a switch, and it can be any type of a switch that's a knowing act, meaning that the person that causes that door to open understands that they're going to activate that switch and the door is going to open. It can be a push plate, it can be a non-contact switch, it can be a keypad, it can be a key switch, it can be a push button. I mean, it can be anything that you want to use. There's really no restriction on the type of switch, so long as the user of that door understands that to make the door open, I have to press or I have to activate this knowing act switch. Critical. You cannot have a low power, low energy door activated by a sensor that you just walk up to. They don't work together. With regard to safety sensors, once again, they can be added if you believe the application warrants it, or if it's specified, there's no problem, but they're not required. Once again, low energy doors also have very specific signage that indicates, for example, if you're using a push button, that the signage says push button to activate door. And we'll talk about that more in depth when we get into the Atom class. But and then the other thing, the other overview I'd like to do with regard to revolving doors. Revolving doors, it's almost like it's a family of doors that you almost feel like need to be separated because there's such a huge variation, all the way from as small as a 6-foot diameter 4-wing manual revolving door up to 16 or greater foot automatic revolving door. But all revolving doors, whether they're manual, automatic, security, would be and they're two-way security for office buildings and things of that nature where they want to control employees in and out of the building, to one-way security such as you might see in an airport for exiting the airplane gate area going into baggage claim. You'll see one-way security doors there that let passengers get out of the gate area into the baggage claim area, but doesn't allow pedestrians to go the other way. And then there's the large diameter. You see them in 3-wing, 4-wing, and 2-wing designs, 16, starting I guess at 12 feet, in some cases up to 16, 18 feet. They may even be bigger, I don't know. Revolving doors. They all require some sort of safety sensors, some sort of activation devices, and signage as well on their revolving doors. And then the last thing I want to cover a little bit before I turn it over to the master is understanding that, so we've talked about these full power doors, we've talked about these low energy doors. All of these doors are covered, their performance is covered by an ANSI standard, American National Standards Institute. There's an ANSI standard that for each of the categories. And when we get into Atom tomorrow, we'll talk about in depth. But please be aware that there are standards. Now, here's here's what's important to know about the ANSI standards, because some of you older guys may say, yeah, I know about the ANSI standards, it's just a voluntary compliance. That's not the case anymore. All of the ANSI standards that relate to power-operated pedestrian doors, all of them, and there's 4 of them, all of them have been adopted by and written into the building codes. International Building Code, NFPA 101 Life Safety Code, National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 101 Life Safety Code, as well as Americans with Disabilities Act, which is basically a law required. So those are the 3 major building codes in use in the United States today. Regionally, in your specific hometown or region, your specific municipality might have some variation of one or all of those codes that they've adopted and are in place. And you need to be aware of those too. Because even though it's an international building code, the individual municipalities are allowed to write or have their own building code. Most of the time, and I've seen very rare occasions where that's not true, but most of the time they've adopted something out of International Building Code, NFPA 101, or ADA. And so all of those major building codes have written in that the doors, if they're full power, they must comply with A156.10 or A156.27 if it's a revolver. If it's low energy, it must comply with A156.19 or A156.38 if it's low energy, low power, low energy. So my point in stressing all this is it's not just a voluntary thing. This is a building code, and it has very specific requirements for sensors, guide rails, safety sensors, signage. So it's not optional. If you don't follow the ANSI standards, you're going to be in violation of the building code. Likely. But as I said, the local fire inspector has the final say. And there may be additional. There may be cases where A117, which is the accessibility standard, is very focused on in your municipality. And there may be other codes that are in effect, but please be aware that those codes are in effect, and your doors need to be adjusted and maintained in compliance to those codes.